Hello, I'm Larry Wilson, and welcome to this segment in our study on the book of Daniel. We're examining Daniel chapter 8. This is part 2 today in our study on this very mysterious chapter. Actually, once you understand it, it's not that mysterious, but getting to the right and intended meaning of Daniel takes a little effort. As I said in the previous segment, there are 6 prerequisites that a person has to understand in order to properly identify who the Antichrist is. And so I would like to show you these 6 prerequisites. I'll say a little bit about them, but I just want to introduce you to them at this time. So let's go to the computer screen and notice prerequisite number 1. I want you to understand that Lucifer is called a man in the Bible. He's called a man because, like man, he is subject to God and is mortal. You can find Lucifer referred to as a man in Isaiah 14, 12 through 17, and Ezekiel chapter 28. You can also find in Daniel 9 how that Gabriel is called a man, and also again in Daniel chapter 10. The second prerequisite you need to understand is that the starry host mentioned in Daniel 8 is an expression or another name for man-made gods. The ancients worshipped deities that they created by lining up the various planets. And they took various planets and would draw lines between them. And from this practice, we have today what is known as astrology. And the starry host is just another name for the many and various gods that were created out of the stars, out of the heavens. So the starry host is another name for man-made gods. And you find this in 2 Kings 17:16 and also chapter 23, verse 5. And you can also see it very clearly in Jeremiah 19:13. There are many other references, but I just chose a few to make it simple. The third prerequisite that you've got to understand in order to properly identify who the horn power in Daniel 8 is, you've got to understand that the daily is not a sacrifice, but rather an intercessory service that Jesus has been performing in heaven's temple ever since sin began. The word sacrifice is inserted in most of the translations of the Bible, but the word is not there. It is not written daily sacrifice in any translation using the original manuscripts. Translators insert it. The word sacrifice is not there. It is not a sacrifice, but a service, the daily service. And it points to the fact that Jesus has been daily performing intercession in heaven on our behalf ever since sin began. We'll discuss this in detail later on. Number 4, the fourth prerequisite. Lucifer will only be allowed to physically appear after a majority of the world has heard the gospel and willfully and knowingly rebelled against God's expressed will. This is an important point to understand. A great rebellion against the gospel will occur before Lucifer is allowed to physically appear. God is going to send out during the Great Tribulation. Let's go to my little chart here. During the Great Tribulation, The 144,000 are going to present the gospel with great power and authority, because the Holy Spirit will be poured out upon them and upon all flesh. And as they present Bible truth, explaining what is God's truth and God's will, most of the world will have heard the gospel before the fifth trumpet occurs, 890 days. Then the devil is allowed to physically appear. Now, while the 144,000 are presenting the gospel, Babylon will be persecuting the 144,000 and those who obey the gospel. So we have a contest between those worshiping the Lamb and those worshiping the dragon, the lamb-like beast. And the catalyst that brings this all into focus will be the judgments of the 7 trumpets. 7 first plagues, 7 last plagues, 7 bowls. Okay? All right, let's go back to our computer screen. So Lucifer, you have to understand, will only be allowed to physically appear after a majority of the world has heard the gospel as presented by the 144,000, and after the world has willfully and knowingly rebelled against God's expressed will, then God's going to send them a strong delusion, and his name is Lucifer, the man of sin. The 5th prerequisite you need to know: the devil will kill, destroy everyone that he cannot deceive or coerce into submission. He will also kill a huge number of saints and prophets, prophets being members of the 144,000. Number 6, the devil will consolidate all of the religions of the world into one religion. Now, I want you to consider this very thoughtfully, and why there is an image to the beast in Revelation 13. See, the beast is a world of many religions. 7 heads represent the 7 religious systems of the world. When the devil physically gets here, his first work will be to consolidate all the religions of the world into one religion. There will be no more Roman Catholicism. There will be no more Mohammedanism or Islam. There will be no more Protestantism. There will be no more Hinduism. There will be no more false religions. There will be one false religion. And why do I say that? The devil will have to eliminate religious diversity. Why? Because he sets himself up as God, claiming authority as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Think about it. If God himself is on earth, what room for religious diversity is there? Because God is now speaking. He will sit on his throne and he will tell the world what is true and what is false. He will eliminate all religious diversity because he sets himself up to be God. And he's got the miracle-working powers to prove it, that he is God, that is, to the wicked. Remember, the wicked don't understand, but the wise will. They will understand his true identity. He will claim authority as King of Kings. That means he will have all political authority. And he will claim to be Lord of Lords. He will be having all religious authority. He will establish a global church state. The 7th prerequisite, I said there were 6, but there's one more that I think you should understand. Ultimately, the devil will impose a mark, a tattoo, on everyone who becomes a member of his kingdom. Why does he do this? Why does he establish the mark? Well, it's very, very, very simple. The mark will be necessary so that survival rations will only be given to people who belong and who support his government. In other words, to prevent people from getting what few rations are available, in order to starve the opposition, Satan will put a tattoo, a mark, on the right hand or the forehead of the members of his kingdom. It's all about survival. It will be a paperless society. There won't be enough electricity at that time to operate a laptop computer. And so this nonsense about chips being buried in the skin and scanners and high tech and all of this, this is very low tech. We're returning to a condition in this world of very primitive life. The judgments caused by the trumpet judgments of God, the destruction, I should say, caused by the trumpet judgments of God, will reduce this world to a very, very difficult place to live. It'll be like it was in ancient times. And rations will be necessary so that people can live. Otherwise, a few rich and powerful gangs would have and hoard everything, and the rest of the world will starve. This is why the devil divides the world up into groups of 1,000. He kills 1/3, and the remaining 2/3, 666, will wear the number 666 on the hand, indicating that they are entitled to what rations exist. And those who do not have the mark can neither buy nor sell. It's all about controlling the survival rations. He's going to starve the opposition. Let me take you back to this chart for a second and notice where the mark of the beast is set up. Let me zoom in on this for you, and so that you can see that in the fifth trumpet, this is where the devil appears, the Antichrist. And you can see in the sixth trumpet, this is where the mark of the devil, the mark of the beast, he's the lamb-like beast here, lamb-like, he's an imposter. He's masquerading as the lamb, as God, as Christ. But he's really Antichrist, but he looks like Christ. He's got angels attending him. He's got glory. He's got ability to create miracles and do all kinds of things. And this is where the mark of the devil, mark of the beast, is imposed. And then the seventh trumpet marks the close of mercy. The Bible lays out these details, lays out the timing, lays out the order of events very, very wonderfully. And if you can understand that in the Bible, for example, over here in the book of Daniel, for example, the Bible talks about the horn power. In Daniel 8, it doesn't say Antichrist, but it gives us, many of the stern-faced features that are going to go with Lucifer when he gets here. He's going to destroy incredibly. This is why in Hebrew and Greek his name is Abaddon and Apollyon, because those terms mean the destroyer. This is why he's called the King of the North. He's sent on a divine mission. It's the same entity, just described differently, just as the ram and the goat and the bear and the leopard and the chest and the thighs all describe Medo-Persia and Grecia. By giving us multiples, remember, by giving us multiples of views of the same thing, we get a clearer understanding of what all the pieces are. Now, you may not know this, but there are many titles given to Lucifer in the Bible. Check this out. In the Bible, Lucifer is called Son of the Dawn or the Morning Star. He's called an angel of light. He's called a man. He's called the King of Babylon. He's called the King of Tyre, because he is the real prince of this world. He was the real king of Babylon, the real king of Tyre. In Ezekiel, he's called Gog. He's called 2 Thessalonians, the man of sin. Daniel 8, a stern-faced king. In Daniel 11:36, the king of the north. Revelation 12, the great red dragon. In Revelation 9, the angel king from the abyss, verse 11, comes out in the fifth trumpet. In Revelation 13, he's the beast that rises out of the earth or comes out of the abyss and startles the world. He astonishes those who see him. He's called the lamb-like beast, or the having horns like the lamb. He's also the false prophet, and he's also the horn power of Daniel 8. Wow. what I'm trying to help you understand is that the book of Daniel and the books of Revelation and 2 Thessalonians and Isaiah and Ezekiel all are pointing to the great Antichrist. And the trouble is, you can't reach the intended identity of the Antichrist until Daniel is unsealed. And this is why today, most of the people today have a faulty and wrong conclusion about the identity of the Antichrist. Well, we're going to set that record straight. The Bible clears it up, tells us what we need to know. So let's go back to the computer screen. Gabriel told Daniel, now remember, we're talking about Daniel 8 now. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. The two horns are the kings, and the ram is the kingdom. Keep that distinction in mind. Now, the shaggy goat is the kingdom of Greece. That word should be translated kingdom. And the large horn between his eyes is the first king. In Daniel 8, horns represent men. So the goat represents the kingdom. The ram represents the kingdom of Grecia and Medo-Persia, respectively. And we know Grecia existed from 331 to 168 BC. The notable horn represents a man. Key point. The first king of the Grecian conquest that conquered the Persians. Alexander the Great died because of a mosquito bite, it is believed, at the height of his military conquest in 323 BC. Just a young man in his early 30s. And the four horns that took the place of the notable horn, you remember in Daniel 8, when the notable horn is broken off, four horns come up in its place. These four horns represent four men who eventually gain control of the goat, that is, the empire of Grecia. And the four men are Lysimachus, Seleucus, Cassander, and Ptolemy. The Grecian Empire was divided to the north, east, west, and south. Now, the horn power in Daniel 8, many people have been led to believe that he comes out of Seleucus, the line of kings, the Seleucid line, if you will. And Antiochus Epiphanes IV is believed to be the fulfillment of the horn power. But that's not possible. It's not possible, and I'll show you why in just a moment. The third element in the vision of Daniel 8 is a horn power that comes out of the four winds, not the four horns. Major point of diversion. This horn power is a man, a stern-faced king who will appear during the time of the end. Gabriel said in verse 19 to Daniel, 8:19, I am going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath. Please look at this. I'm going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath. What does that mean? The time of wrath. Because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. Well, because God says so much with so few words, you need to take these 5 words very thoughtfully. The time of wrath. This is a key indication. And let me set it up for you for a moment. When Adam and Eve sinned, they were to be crucified, or executed, Crucified is the wrong word. Jesus was crucified. Adam and Eve were to be executed the very day that they ate the fruit. The promise in Genesis 2:17 was, in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Because the wages of sin is death by execution, and this is why Jesus was executed on the cross. He was crucified because the wages of sin is death by execution. At the end of the 1,000 years, when the wicked are burned up, they are executed by fire that comes down from God out of heaven and burns them up. The wages of sin is death by execution. Adam and Eve were to be executed. The wrath of God's law was to be imposed on Adam and Eve the day they sinned, the very day. The King James Version translates it very nicely. In the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Can't be any clearer than that. But what stopped that from happening? What stopped the wrath that was coming upon Adam and Eve? Jesus did. He stood in the way. He became man's intercessor. And when he steps out of the way and stops interceding, the wrath of God will fall. That's why we have 7 first plagues and 7 last plagues in the book of Revelation. 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, because that is the wrath of God against a world deserving wrath. And it happens at the appointed time of the end. I'm going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. Now, look at verse 23, Daniel 8:23. In the latter part of their reign, when rebels, that's a key word, rebels, have become completely wicked. In other words, when rebellion has reached its fullness, a stern-faced king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He comes according to the specifications of divine power. That's why he comes out of the north. He is sent and empowered by God to do his destructive work. Just like Nebuchadnezzar was, just like Cyrus was, just like Rome was, just like Alexander the Great was. All of these were empowered by God to do God's will. And the devil will be sent, but not in his own power. Daniel is going to clear a lot of things up if you'll just let Daniel speak. In the latter part of their reign, when rebellion has become complete, when people have become completely wicked, a stern-faced king, this master of intrigue, manipulation, the word intrigue means manipulation, will arise. And he will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation. He's a destroyer. And he will succeed in whatever he does. And he will destroy, guess who? The mighty men and the holy people. And you can read the same words in Revelation 13:7. He's making war against the saints and he will conquer them, the Bible says. You got to understand what God is going to do here, so that your faith in God will not be destroyed when the destroyer arrives. Understanding the appearing of the Antichrist is not optional. It is most important. But the wicked will never understand this, so I don't know that you can change their minds. Daniel 8:25. He, that is this stern-faced king, the horned power out of the north, he will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself having no equal. He will claim to be God. And when they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against whom? Jesus, the Prince of Princes. Why is Jesus called a prince here? A prince of princes? Why is Jesus considered a prince among princes, also in Daniel 10? Because the Father is considered the king. And Jesus is considered the archangel. And as the archangel, Michael, he is the prince of princes. Okay, yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. The coming horn power, the stern-faced king, cannot be destroyed by human power. Man cannot destroy angels. Angels can destroy men, and in fact, in Revelation 9:15, 4 angels are going to kill 1.5 billion plus people. So the vision in Daniel 8 consists of 3 elements: a ram, a goat, and a horn power. The ram and goat are part of ancient kingdoms. We know that. And so the horn power will appear during the time of wrath. He is the stern-faced king from the north. The ram and the goat are ancient kingdoms. So the only element left in this vision that can be placed at the time of the end is the horn power. Most prophetic commentators make a serious mistake here. They say the horn power in Daniel 8 is either the same power as the horn power in Daniel 7, the Roman Catholic Church, or they say it is Antiochus Epiphanes IV, and both of these answers are incorrect. Both claims are faulty because neither interpretation can meet all of the specifications given in Daniel 8. And you remember what Rule 2 says? Rule 2 says all specifications have to be met in order for fulfillment to be declared. And this includes the order within the prophecy. So, neither of these two conclusions can meet all the specifications given in Daniel 8. They're faulty. There's only one intended meaning, and there is only one entity that can meet the specifications given in Daniel 8. Furthermore, to make this vision relevant to the time of the end, scholars who make the horn power Antiochus IV then claim that the stern-faced king is a 4th prophetic element, and this 4th prophetic element appears during the appointed time of the end. This technique, this manipulation, is impossible according to Rule 1. Prophetic elements are not introduced outside of the apocalyptic sequence. In other words, the vision in Daniel 8 consists of 3 sequential elements: a ram, a goat, and a horn power. After the sequence was presented to Daniel, with beginning and ending points in time, Gabriel then provides some commentary on what Daniel was shown. The same process is followed in Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and elsewhere. The point that I'm driving at here is that only when you get the right answer will all of the pieces come together and make perfect sense. And only the final generation can understand who the Antichrist is, because the book of Daniel is sealed up until the appointed time of the end. Well, we're out of time for this segment, but we will pick right up here in just a moment.